Welcome to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast with Darren Mitchell. If you're a sales leader looking to take your leadership to a whole new level, then this is the podcast for you. We'll be exploring tips, techniques, and strategies to help you take your leadership to the exceptional level and allow you to enjoy more money, more meaning, and better sales results. Welcome back to the Exceptional Sales Leader Podcast. Darren Mitchell here, and another wonderful guest, Mr. Amarpreet Kalkat. Hope I said that right. From all the way coming in from.
You're pretty much there. You're better than 90% of the people, Darren.
Sensational. Yes. And we were talking just before, and you were saying that what's in a name? Well, a lot is in a name, and you've got to be really careful on how you pronounce some people's names. So I'm really, really conscious of making sure I pronounce people's names. So I'm hoping that I got that right, my friend.
Yes. Pretty
so
much.
welcome to the podcast. You're coming in from the San Francisco area. So
that's right.
So you're currently, as it is today, this is Friday, and you're still on the Thursday.
Yes, I'm still on Thursday. You're far ahead of us. What to do?
So you're talking to somebody in the future. How good is that?
There you are.
So looking forward to this conversation. For the listeners, you are the founder and CEO of Humantic. Did I pronounce that right? Humantic AI?
Yeah, that's easier than Amarpreet for sure.
And this is your second AI startup. You said you've been literally in the founder space or the startup space for over a decade, and you spend your time between Bangalore and India, and also in the US. So very much looking forward to jumping into this. I mentioned also to you that I've spoken to a few people around this concept of AI, and love to get your take, being deep into the AI world, how you're seeing the world, I guess, form and change around AI, and organizations that are embracing it versus organizations that are perhaps not embracing it. So before we get into all of that, love to get a bit of background, certainly for the listeners, on your story and what led you to this. I know you've got a fairly interesting background, but what was it that kind of piqued your interest in this world of AI, and specifically becoming a founder and working in startups?
Yeah, Darren. So as we were just chatting, my startup story is around a dozen years, more than a decade old right now. Interestingly enough, well, now it's a pretty hot commodity, but I have been an AI founder for 10 plus years now. And my startup journey, how it started, interestingly, so I started my career way back around, it's been almost 25 years now, in 2000. So I was passionate about, or became passionate right over time about building what I essentially call intelligent products. So I always wanted to build products, build technology products. I'm a big technology optimist, you could say, big AI optimist. Although I combine that with a slight dose of realism, I'll come back to that. I think people get carried away too often. Yeah. So building intelligent product was simply sort of my jam, so to speak. So 2010, I'm like, oh, wow, I'm 10 years into the industry. What the hell am I doing? I'm still not building what I wanted to build. I just want to build. That's all I was keen on about. And that's what led to me. At some point, I said, you know what? Screw it. It's not going to happen like this, working in jobs. So let me just go and do something on my own, right? The way I want things to be.
Yeah.
So that's how in 2011, I started my startup journey. And, spent a couple of years figuring stuff out. So 2014 was my first startup. It was called Frol AI. So we were in the consumer intelligence space, mostly serving B2C marketing teams. And, I worked on that for a little while. Then in 2021, something that we were doing as part of the earlier startup, started becoming a bigger thing. And that's what became Humantic AI in 2021. So now for the last 3 years, I've been on my Humantic AI journey.
Because you mentioned before that you love building stuff, and I noticed in your background you spent some time at Nokia.
I did.
And interestingly, I spent 20 plus years in telecommunications, and the early days, and when I say the early days, when mobile phones started to sort of penetrate the marketplace, there were a couple of big players in the marketplace around mobile phones, and one was Nokia and one was Ericsson.
Yes.
And over time, the Nokia and Ericsson, I guess, market share started to dwindle, particularly when this thing called the Apple iPhone came on board.
It happened.
So what did because I know you spent a bit of time at Nokia in the product management space. Was that developing products in the Nokia suite, and did that sort of, I guess, furnish the desire to keep building, and that led you then to more um,
Yeah.
more exploratory avenues such as startups?
Yeah. So Nokia was interesting. I saw Nokia's worst, so to speak. So so somehow I managed to land up at companies that are literally hitting their rock bottom. I don't know how much of a role I have to play. Yeah, but it happened with HP Hewlett Packard. I was there from 2004 to 7. It literally hit rock bottom. Then I joined a company called Trilogy, which was a fantastic company. It shaped my way of doing things. I would say, I don't know how familiar you are, but I was there 2007 to 9. I wouldn't say it hit rock bottom, but the founder made some massive business model changes. It sort of hit something, it's since bounced back a little bit, but it's not what it was. And
Yeah,
then Nokia. So I landed Nokia in 2009. iPhone's already there. It's kicking our ass, absolutely, right? It's kicking our butt. And we're trying to figure all this stuff out. What do we do? What do we not do? I stayed there till 2011. And by then, it was pretty much done.
yeah,
I was in Helsinki in our cafeteria when Stephen Allop, who was a guy who came in from Microsoft to steer Nokia, came
yeah.
and he gave his big talk and said, "I'm here to do this and that." I was there, like I was literally there. I was in Helsinki, that day, incidentally, that week. So I was working on the not on the hardware side, but software products. I was the product manager for single sign-on, like just how do you enable smooth sign-on across all the Nokia devices, apps, and whatnot. So it was interesting. I mean, I can say a lot, but my big takeaway is, when Nokia was a very innovative company. If talking about Nokia for a minute, it was actually a very innovative company. uh, Apple iPhone didn't do something that Nokia had not done. It actually had done and built that.
Yeah.
It's just that I think the European speed of execution, I would say broadly, is slow.
Yeah, okay.
And when American innovation and American pace of execution met at that, it just Nokia used to compete with Motorola, etc. So competing with, I wouldn't say second grade, but next rung American companies was probably doable. But when it hit Apple and Google, it just, Nokia couldn't just come to terms with it. So yeah, it was a lot of lessons, from those 2.5 years I spent at Nokia.
It's interesting you say that because it reminds me of the story of Kodak and how Kodak had such a huge market penetration of
Yes.
film in photography, and yet they were
Yeah.
also the ones that held on to the technology. Correct me if I'm wrong, they invented the technology of digital photography within
Yes.
that
Same.
business,
Exactly.
and yet
Exactly.
they didn't
They
use
never did
they
anything with
didn't
it.
use
Yes.
it.
It happens. It happens all the time. And no, I mean, forget Kodak, forget Nokia. We are seeing that right now. So everyone who's, we're talking about AI here a little bit.
Yeah,
We are seeing it right now. We will realize in probably 5 years. It's happening with Google right now. We don't realize, that the transformer architecture which underlies LLMs and ChatGPT was invented at Google.
mm,
But it's not Google we're talking about today, right? We're talking about OpenAI. We're talking about, Chat GPT. We'll see how Google does. I think the jury is still out,
yeah.
but it's definitely conceded the lead to OpenAI, and it's not easy to bounce back, from such debacle. So we're seeing it right now, like happening in AI. What happened to Nokia and what happened to Kodak before that?
And so this will be a case study maybe in 5 years or in 10 years' time in
Poss-
terms of what happened.
well, I
And
hope I hope for Google's sake it doesn't become a case study, but odds are, odds are it would, yes.
wow. And so when you made I guess because there was a bit of I guess a co-founding gap, if you like, between Nokia and your first AI startup.
Yeah.
What was it about? Well, there's a couple of questions there. What was it about startups that really enticed you to want to go in that direction? And specifically, Was it something you saw within the product work you were doing at companies like Nokia that said to you, look, this future around AI is so exciting, I just have to be part of it? Or was it something you just moved into?
So it was actually the opposite.
Okay.
It was what I was not doing at Nokia, I would say.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's this thing, right? It says I think it's a GB Shaw, George Bernard Shaw quote about the unreasonable man, it says, right? It says, the reasonable man tries to adapt himself to the world, and the unreasonable man tries to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. Yeah.
Love it.
So it's a quote. So I thought things should be a certain way. So I'm one of those, I don't know, idiotic, stupid people. It wasn't like, hey, here's an opportunity. I can go and make, quick buck or a million or billion or whatever that is. It was more like, why are things not like this? This is how it should be. I was at Nokia and I'm like, why are we not building intelligent products?
Yes.
In fact, because we're talking Nokia and we're talking about, where did my inspiration sort of come from? One of the suggestions that I try to, um, take forward at Nokia was I said, look, iPhone's here, it's kicking our butt, absolutely. And no one ever catches up with someone else by trying to catch up. The
Mm.
only way you catch up is by actually shooting to get ahead.
Yeah.
Why, why don't, just like Samsung and others, why don't we also get on the Android bandwagon?
Yeah.
Right? So that we're not falling behind because Android was doing well. This is 2009, 10. I said iPhone had already been around for 3 years. Android was on the scene, and we had a operating system. I think it was called Migo.
Hmm.
I think it was called Migo. Nokia had an operating system which was built for inter-device connectivity, like not just phone to phone, but you could easily talk to your fridge, to your TV. Like everything is connected.
Yeah.
And to me, that was the future. That future still not happened really properly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the future, and I try to put that idea forward that we don't let Apple or Google pull away by getting on Android, and we try to get ahead of them by trying to build this Migo, which is like a futuristic devices talking to each other. Everything is intelligent.
Yeah.
So so that was kind of the world I wanted to see. I had been at three big companies, HP, Trilogy. Trilogy wasn't that big, but big enough. And then Nokia, HP, and Nokia were big. And 2010, I said, you know what? The world I want to see is not going to happen if I keep just doing these jobs at big companies. So I think I should just go and do my own thing. So that's how my startup journey really started. So I wasn't looking to do a startup. It just happened because I couldn't get to do what I wanted to do.
Nice. And you mentioned just then also that the technology that you were thinking about still hasn't really come to fruition where you've got this multi-device connectivity or seamless
Yeah.
connectivity. I just look at like how I was brought up in terms of what we had access to and just simple things like a remote control for your television. There was a time in my life where that was a pipe dream where you actually had to physically get up from your seat,
Yeah, I've
walk
been
over the
I've been
TV and
there.
change the channel.
I've been there. I've been there myself. Yeah. Yeah, totally.
It's frightening as to what is going to come down the pipe in terms of technology and how all these devices are going to talk to each other. What
Yeah.
also, I guess, frightens me and excites me at the same time is the artificial intelligence in terms of human interaction
Yeah.
around how are we going to be communicating in 15 or 20 years or 100 years time? Are we going to have mobile devices or is it all going to be imprinted somewhere that we're just communicating
Oh,
for all different things?
that's a fascinating area. I mean, if you get me going on those topics, and I think about a lot about these topics. Like I said, at my heart, I'm a builder, right?
Yeah,
I became a seller by necessity. So we'll come back. Of course, this is
yeah,
Exceptional Sales Leader podcast, so we'll come back to that. But my investors in my first startup will keep saying, they'll say, Amarpreet, if you could sell as well as you build, you'll absolutely, absolutely, hit it out of the park. And at some point, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna learn how to sell, right?
yeah,
I'll learn how to sell, and I became a student of sales. There are a lot of sales leaders better than me, but I think I've learned a thing or two.
Mm.
Reached a pretty decent level as a sales leader. But at heart, I'm a builder. And back to your point about where we're gonna go in 50 years, 100 years, maybe 20, maybe 10, who knows? And again, this goes back to my Nokia days, the idea that I just gave you, a fundamental premise that I had. And again, that was part of that big thing that I tried to. I was a fairly junior guy. Like I was not a very senior guy, but
Yeah.
you could say I was sort of well recognized, saying, oh, this guy can think and, do a thing or two. So people sort of listen to me a little bit, not a lot. Yeah. Just a tiny bit more than they should have. So and if you think fundamentally, see, is communication supposed to be between two devices, two phones, right? These things, or is it
Yeah.
supposed to be between two people,
Mm.
right? Then why is it tied to the device? Why do I have to talk to you on my phone?
Yeah.
So, and because with Migo, we had device connectivity, my point was, hey, we should know where the person is, right? And we should take the communication there.
Mm.
If I am on the laptop, the phone call should come on my laptop,
Yeah.
right? Why do I have to grab my phone, which is lying in the next room? Why do I have to miss a call because my phone is away from you? You see, I mean, it's very simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's still not happened. So one part is that it's fundamentally still missing. Communication is still tied to the device.
Mm.
It should be tied to the person because people interact. Number two, to your point, yeah, again, that's a broad pattern that the interfaces, one, they keep becoming smaller, and second, they keep getting nearer to us, like especially the communication interfaces. And I think we're getting there where, yes, at some point, I don't know, 10, 20, 50, or 100 years, but I doubt why we would need a device, right? So
Yeah.
it should be, implant in our ear to hear, and it should be, maybe even like, the neurotransplants are coming where it just reads your thoughts, So we'll get there. I don't think at some point we'll not need these devices. That's bound to happen. We don't know when that'll happen.
As you're talking there, I'm just having visions of some sci-fi shows and movies where um, there's potentially a world where nobody is actually speaking. We're actually communicating through thinking patterns. But
Yeah.
when instead of having an Apple Maps or a Google Maps, you're walking down the street and like the Matrix, you're seeing
Yeah.
a grid and all this information is available to you
Do
in real
do
time.
you do you do you know way back 15 years ago, one Russian engineer, let's just say, actually built this technology, and he's maybe not even the only one. It might have been built more than once, but I know that one where you could actually project a screen in the air,
Wow.
just like Matrix. 15 years ago, I'm saying, Darren, 15 years ago, all it needed, now it wasn't like just air. I
Mm.
think it needed some sort of, water particles, like, a very, very thin mist, if you will. So
Yeah.
a sort of a spray, right, of water, like,
Yeah.
it needed something like that. So it never became a viable technology. It never went mainstream,
Yeah.
but he had actually built it out. If you try to look for it, you'll find it a long
Wow.
time ago, where you could project like you walking, and you could just project right in front of you. Now we're trying to do that, of course, with,
Yeah.
virtual reality, augmented reality, glasses and all.
Yeah.
But that technology it did come by. Yeah.
You just had to have a spray bottle in front of you.
It's something like that. You have to be just spraying, and you can see, yes. So if you look it up, you'll actually find it. It was a long time ago.
Sensational. Oh, it's frightening to think about what's coming. And I think our children, our children's children are the world will be completely different to what even we know
But
today.
that's how it's always been, right? We get wedded to the world that we are in.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're like, oh, this is how it is. And
Yeah.
I suppose like me, you're probably in your 40s or maybe 50s, and you sort of get wedded to the world that was in your 20s generally, and maybe 30s.
Yeah.
Like you think that was the world, that was the best world.
Yeah.
It's not like that. World's evolved a lot. It will evolve a lot. We are thousand times better off, than
Mm.
some, like, even 3 or 4 generations ago. Uh, Sometimes there are these step changes that happen, right? Like the Industrial Revolution.
Yeah.
So sometimes the changes are smaller. So sometimes there might be 500 years. There's only gradual changes, no step changes.
Mm.
And sometimes, there could be, just a year when or two when there's just such a massive change that the world changes a lot. So that's why it's been happening for thousands of years now.
Yeah. It's funny. It's amazing what you think about when you're out walking and just thinking about things. And I often look back at photographs and old movies or old home movies of me and my family back in the like 1980s or early 1990s and
Yeah.
try to put myself back there. And you're so right, because back then we thought, well, this is the technology that was there was
Yeah.
um so modern back then. But we look back on it
Yeah.
now and we think,
When you
really?
look back, yeah,
Really?
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So
so
it's
you
interesting. Yeah.
mentioned before how you had to learn to move into sales. Now, I guess as
Yeah.
a person working in big organizations,
Right.
being a builder, you still have had to have sold, I guess, your idea, bring people on
Yeah.
board, do the influencing of key stakeholders. What did you learn from a selling perspective and an influencing perspective as a leader of your own organization where nobody probably had known about you in that space? It was literally brand new. So, what were some of the key lessons that you learned moving into that space from a leadership and an influencing and selling perspective as a founder?
Well, that's a great question. I think there are a lot of lessons that I have learned. Everyone learns as they truly dig deep. If you dig deep, right? If you decide you want to become a master, right? And to become a master, first you have to become a student, isn't it? So that's just how the journey goes. So a lot of learning, I would say, happens to be counterintuitive generally in life. Like some things we learn because we do them.
Mm,
But a lot of things that we learn by default, we realize later that they are not the right things, the best things, because what is counterintuitive, the opposite of that is actually, the better thing. So for me, a lot of that learning uh, was counterintuitive. I suppose it's for everyone who's trying to learn sales. I'm talking specifically about sales now.
mm,
For example, before that, you want to persuade someone. Yeah. How would you persuade someone? Odds are by default, you will learn to make some arguments, right? Make some statements. One of the lessons I've learned over time, right, as a seller, you don't convince anyone by telling them. You just convince people by making them think. So you don't make statements, you ask questions, right?
yeah.
You ask questions. You like, Darren, so you think Humantic AI is not a great product. What makes you say that, Darren? You must have seen something better, right?
You idiot.
Yeah. So exactly, rather than you see what I'm saying, and you're like, no, I saw that product. So something about that must have appealed to you. Was it this? Was it that? Oh, did that product do this, by the way? No, it didn't do that. Oh, don't you think your customers deserve that? Well, actually, I do. Right? So I mean, that's just one counterintuitive thing because I see that I keep telling my team, they're trying to convince customers, telling them this, that, and I'm like, no, 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 no. Listen to the experts. They've been telling for a while. You don't tell, right? You don't tell. You just make the customer think. People will choose what ultimately they decide to choose.
Mm,
You can just influence it and subtle your influences, stronger that decision would be. So that's one example of what I have learned that I probably, was too much in the telling mode at Nokia, and that's why no one listened to me, for example. So
Because
that's
you had
that.
those
Yeah.
fantastic ideas where you could actually have device to device, not mobile phone to mobile, and nobody listened to you.
Nobody listened to me because I should have helped made them think or not just try to show them how, smart or whatever I was, right? Which is probably what you're trying to do often enough as a salesperson. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting, Amarpreet, as you talk about that, because a lot of salespeople still today in 2024
Yeah.
spend too much time, I guess, drinking their own company's Kool-Aid. And I say that
All the
very
time.
respectfully.
All the time. Yes.
They've got to
Yes.
understand and believe in their product or their service, but they almost go out to the marketplace trying to convince the marketplace that my product is the best versus,
Yes.
hey, I know my product or my service is the best. I don't have to convince you that it's the best. What I've got to try and figure out is do you have a problem that you want to solve that this solution may be able to help you do that? And how can I match
Exactly.
that in a way
Yes.
that you want to come to me, not just buy this now, but look at what else I can provide you moving forward?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know a little bit what we do, but let me just spend a minute on that because we put our money where the mouth is, so to
Hmm.
speak. So we sell something we call buyer intelligence. What is buyer intelligence? It is a way for you to understand and know your customers much, much better. So, and what we are telling the sellers, or what we are saying, sellers, what we can help you do is we will help you put your buyer first, see what matters to them, see what they care about, what they don't care about. Put that first before you start drinking your Kool-Aid, before you start doing your thing. So essentially, our product is a way to become buyer first, we call it. You become a buyer first seller.
Hmm.
You get on a call and you don't start saying me this, me that. You say, what's your problem? What are you solving? Let me see if I can solve it. If I can't solve it, then am I genuine enough, authentic enough that I'll say, well, doesn't look like I can solve your problem, but hey, I know ABC who can,
Yeah.
right? That's a good seller. We should aspire to be that seller
Mm.
if we can. And sometimes the customer's convinced and sometimes they're not, right? They're like,
Yeah.
yeah, I like you, but I don't think you can solve it. That's when selling skills come in, where you, like I said, you make them think, huh, why do you say that, right?
Yeah.
So then it's your job. But that's our belief, and we live that every day, that first you have to understand what the buyer cares for. It's not about you, it's about the buyer. The buyer comes first. Then you have to help them solve their problem,
Mm.
always keeping them first. Sometimes it could mean that you are not a part of the solution. It's okay. It's not a big deal. You don't have to be a part of every solution. There's just find customers where you can be a part of the solution. If you can't
Yeah.
find anyone, then you're building a wrong product anyway, right? So
That's
you need to change
right.
the product. Yeah.
You can go back to Nokia then.
Go back to Nokia then. Yes, absolutely. That's what I'll have to
So
do. Yeah.
absolutely. So I love that. I love that concept of building buyer intelligence because a lot of people look at AI and think, well, this is to enhance the sales process. And in some markets, they think, well, AI can to some degree replace some of the functions of an account manager or an SDR or a BDR,
Yeah.
BDE type thing. So as you made I guess, the migration, because your first, I guess, evolution with AI was you mentioned before business to consumer.
Yeah.
So making the leap from that into Humantic AI, was there something specific that you identified in the marketplace that led you down the path of buyer intelligence, or was it something you just stumbled upon?
So I would say it was sort of a combination of both. See, in our case, we've been a very, what shall I say, future, future state driven. I wouldn't call it future vision, really. I'll call it future state driven,
Yeah,
where we think, hey, this is how things should be. Now, that, by the way, anyone listening, and if you're a founder, that's a very bad way of building a startup. You should, it is the hardest way. Well, the only positive thing is if you succeed at that, you succeed big, often
yeah,
enough, very, very big. Otherwise, a better way is to identify a need that the market has, a gap in the market, and then you leverage that, you build your solution, and then you listen to customers and build some more.
yeah.
So I think in our case, we've tried to combine both.
Hmm.
From my last startup, at some point we said, hey, what this, like we had built this personality prediction AI back in 2015, 16. We said, oh, this is great. We are using it for hiring and selling. What if, we could take it to the market? And so it started with this is how things should be. And then, of course, it was about listening to the users and trying to bring. So in our case, it was bringing two things together rather than purely just being based on the market feedback. So, and that's, you have to do that. You can't purely be vision based. This is how the world should be. Like, even if you're that unreasonable man trying to adapt the world to yourself, you still have to pay attention to the customer, the user, because often enough, that'll be the difference between doing something very good versus doing something just about good. And just about a good too many times is not enough.
Yeah, yeah. Unless you've got some outliers like Elon Musk that seems to create his own industry
That's
himself.
well, that's the strongest example, right? And that's what I said of a future state-driven founder, the unreasonable man. He's visibly the unreasonable man. Steve Jobs was like that, right? He
Yeah,
was the unreasonable man because, and that's what happens if you succeed, you succeed big. Now we know
mm,
Musk, we know Steve Jobs. Odds are for every Musk and every Steve Jobs, there's probably 3 or 30 that did not succeed.
yeah,
Those not illogical, unreasonable people who said this is how the world should be.
mm,
Like Tesla is a great example, because Tesla is a big name, a household name now.
yeah,
But Nikola Tesla, from where the name comes from, he was one of those people, and he did not succeed in his lifetime, right? It happens often enough.
yeah.
So those tend to be the big successes. In Musk's case or Steve Jobs' case, they became those successes, and we should be happy because they're helping us progress, faster as humankind, yes, mankind.
Absolutely.
Bless you.
Now, for those who I just muted because I just sneezed. Oh, it's so embarrassing I did that not long ago on a training course. So I was getting
That's
videoed
okay.
on
That's human. That's
sneeze, sneeze,
human.
sneeze away.
Everyone's sneezes, Darren. So that shouldn't be embarrassing at all. If someone finds it embarrassing, they should give it a second thought.
I will warn you, my friend. I normally sneeze in threes. So I was actually doing a face-to-face workshop yesterday, and I sneezed 4 times in front of the whole room. Had to turn away and sneeze into my elbow. So it's no, it's interesting. So from a founder's point of view, then let's talk specifically because I'd love to delve into the intricacies of what the software does and how it can help sales teams and revenue teams. But
Yeah,
from a founder's point of view, I know you've already mentioned that you've learnt to ask questions rather than convince. Are there any
yeah,
other key things that as a founder, as a startup um, entrepreneur, that you've had to learn where you've got this idea as what the future state would look like, um, that has enabled you to, I guess, fast track the development of the business to the point where
yeah,
you've now got organizations coming to you to say, hey, how can you enhance what we do in the B2B space? Because I reckon there'll be listeners that are, or leaders that are listening to this thinking, we've got some challenges with our sales team right now.
mhm,
And it might be a mix of they're trying to convince customers because they firmly believe in their product, but they haven't quite got the mix right in terms of asking the right questions or using the right sort of sales philosophy or approach. What were
right,
some of the things that you've maybe have learned but continue to learn because you've been along this journey for a number of years now
yeah,
that helps you, and not just for you as the founder, but helps your team put out, I guess, the Humantic
yeah.
message to the marketplace that people could leverage off.
Again, talk about yeah, two, three things here. See, one part is I would start with the basics. Now, it's there's no magical insight here, but way too often we just forget the basics. Yeah, understand the pain of the customer, for example, right? Start from there, see what they are trying to do. It's very easy, as you said earlier, to just drink our own Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
You tell me, hey, Amarpreet, you seem to be building a great product. And immediately I'll be like, oh, let me tell you more about my product, right? I just lose sight of what I came here for, which was to help you solve a problem. So number one is basics. Just learn the basics, stick to them. It's very hard to stick to the basics. It takes a lot of hard work. It takes a
Mm,
lot of hard work just to follow the basics. That's number one. Number two that I have, learned over time is, and this is more important than others because I see too many people making a mistake.
yeah.
Um, people, very few people use technology effectively, especially in sales. Because I have been an engineer, right? I have a slightly different perspective. Often I'll be talking to sales leaders and they'll be like, we've got too many tools. We don't want these many tools. I want to do away with these tools. And I'll be like, have you spoken to your engineering team how many tools they use? And they'll be like, what are you saying? That's engineering, this is selling.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, go home. Do you know how many computers do you have in your home today compared to 15 years ago? Right? There's 25 computers in your living room probably today.
Yeah.
The point is, technology is here. Technology is, it's a force multiplier. If we learn to use it well, it is one of the best things we could do for our business, for our teams, for our quotas. Most sales teams are bad is the word, at using technology. It's not that they have too many tools and technologies, they're just not using them well enough. They don't know. I
Yeah.
was speaking to a senior guy, a very senior sales leader. He's now an advisor to Gartner, and he said something beautiful. He's like, give us sales leader $1 million, and they'll probably go and hire two more reps. Whereas they should be buying, more technology. And the problem is technology is not orchestrated well or pieced together well. That's where the challenge comes. Look at engineering. Engineering teams rebuild the same thing by themselves before it breaks.
Yeah.
How many times do we do that in sales, right? Where we are reviewing constantly, improving constantly.
Mm.
So that's lesson number two, I would say. And like I said, I'm trying to think of the biggest impact items. Number three, and we try to live that, because it's not been possible to know our buyers deeply. We don't spend enough caring about the people on the other side of the table. We're very
Mm.
transactional as sellers, right? So we're like, okay, let's just get the sale done. Let's just get the sale done. We need to pay attention to people. We need to care about people. The best sellers, every single one of them, they have always been absolutely amazing at their people skills. So too often the focus we see, hey, we use Zoom Info, we get phone numbers, we get intent data, we get technographics. You're just trying to know the company better. What is their need? That's the need of the company. What is the want of the buyer,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because let us say company A wants to buy generative AI, let's say for a minute. Well, guess what? Generative AI is supposed to be special. It still has half a dozen options,
Yeah.
right? And they're almost equally good. OpenAI is not much better than Anthropic at this point of time, right? Llama's not really far behind. That's open source. So who would I buy from? I would buy from someone that I can come to trust,
Yeah.
that I believe will be a good partner for me.
Yeah.
And that's where the people part. So that's number three. We really need to become, buyer centric. We need to develop that buyer first mindset. If we do that, it is a no brainer that we will do significantly better. We see that with our products results for that matter. We are like, if you go to G2, we are second most adopted sales AI right now, second most. And partly that's driven by the kind of impact our customers see today. So
Yeah.
we are seeing that firsthand, not to just talk about long term what it does. So those are the three things I would say: basics, technology, and developing a buyer first mindset.
Love it. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Humantic, um, I get a sense that there's human in that, which there is, and maybe technology. So you're putting human technology together.
No, so actually, well, the human part you got right. The tech part is not technology.
Okay.
So, but it is the meaning is similar. So, where does the name Humantic AI come from? Our belief is that technology needs to be more humanized.
Yeah.
So it's about humanizing, so a human way of selling or a humantic way of selling is that's all,
Love it.
so make AI more humantic,
Yeah.
because AI by default is very robotic, very mechanical, right?
Yeah.
We all see that even with ChatGPT. And we think unless we bring that human touch, or at least a proxy of that human touch to it, it would not go mainstream. For it to go mainstream, like today we're talking about, you mentioned AI replacing SDRs, right? People are talking about agents and whatnot.
Yeah.
For that to happen, actually happen, Whether we want it to happen or not, the point is some part of it is bound to happen. It will happen.
Mm.
But for it to happen well enough, it will need to replicate human behavior.
Yeah.
So that's our way of thinking. That's where the name Humantic AI comes from, to humanize AI and make it more palatable, conducive, right? Acceptable to humans.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get it. And I love those three things you talked about. Getting it right in the pain of the customers is critical. And the second one is really interesting because I've seen a lot of organizations that put technology in and they think or they believe, or in some cases they hope that the technology is going to make all the difference. But it's the people that use that technology that
The
either
people that,
makes it or breaks it. And the third part, I think, what I want to delve into in relation to what you guys do is you're so right. There's a lot of organizations out there and their sales teams still maintain a level of transactional, I guess, approach. And
unfortunately,
I
yeah,
don't necessarily think that it's always the salespeople's fault or the sales leaders. I think it's symptomatic of the fact that they're driven by so much pressure to hit certain numbers by certain timelines that they're forced into, in many cases, a transactional, I guess, whirlwind of getting things done. Um, but if we can take a step back and use technology like Humantic AI to build a better buy experience and get better intelligence, it should make it more effective for us to build more human connections, which won't be transactional. It should be longer term. So
yeah,
we know that customers know more about us as organizations and us as individuals before they engage with us. So often they've done some research and made a decision on who they're going to deal with before they even integrate and interact with a seller. From your perspective, building buyer intelligence, why is it important? And this might sound like a logical question, but it's amazing how illogical people out there are. Why is it
yeah,
important to be buyer first? And what is it you guys do that enables the sales team to become buyers first that can
yeah.
differentiate them in their marketplace?
Rather than tell, I'll try to show. So it's always better than. So let me, if you want to bring it up, I think I can't share my screen, but I'm putting a mess link here in the chat window. This is
Have a crack now.
Humantic AI's prediction of you, Darren, as a person. Okay. I have seen it before I've met you. I already know what do I need to do to, become Darren first, so to speak. Yeah. So to learn more about you, to have insights, to talk your language, where you go back and say, I like this Amarpreet guy. He seems like my kind of a guy. Yeah. Because guess what? You don't buy from anyone that you don't trust, and you never trust someone that you don't like.
Yeah.
Like, when was the last time you trusted someone that you actually disliked? Never, right? You never
Never.
ever trust someone you don't like. So
Yeah.
liking, and how do we like each other? We don't realize, but our mind likes people who tend to be similar to us.
Yeah.
I love motorcycles. When I meet someone who's into motorcycles, my first thought is, oh, this fellow must be, a good person, because, hey, guess what? My impression is that motorcyclists are, they're straight, they're direct, but they're good people, right? So immediately I'll take a liking between two sellers, one who's a motorcyclist, one who's, not. I would, all other things being equal, I would say, oh, I like this motorcyclist fellow, right? It's similarity.
Yeah.
So that's what you see, right? That's everything I know about you before I spend even a minute with you, and you can see what you can start doing with that, right?
So you did this before we jumped on the call.
My AI did this. It takes 5 seconds. It just took your LinkedIn profile. It spitted this out.
And is
It
that
knew
was
you
that
would
simply
crack
looking?
jokes. It knew you would, you laugh easy. It knew if I talk to you, I'll give you some secrets, right? With someone like you, it's probably advising me to take a high energy approach. And you see how I am now.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm naturally like that. Maybe I
Yeah.
am, right? And you'll say, oh, good conversation. But guess what? What if I'm not? I can't change myself completely, neither should I.
Yeah.
But it is a good idea, right, to talk your language, and
Yeah.
because it makes it a much better interaction for everyone. So that's just kind of the key piece of when you know someone and you can adapt your style to their style and they feel more comfortable, they feel more heard, they go back and say, I think Amarpreet gets me. That's what they're gonna say about you when you're using Humantic AI.
So for those that can't see this because it's on my other screen, I'm a pioneer. I'm a disk type DSI, which is interesting because the last time I did disk a few years ago, I wasn't a D, but that's all right. That's all. So that you said that took no time at all. So
Yeah.
here's the question that there's so much information available for the people listening to this and trying to build a better buy experience. Where does this technology grab information from? Because you've got my LinkedIn profile
Right on
photo.
LinkedIn.
It's all
It's coming
LinkedIn.
from LinkedIn. Just your LinkedIn profile. That's it.
That's
That's
it.
it. That goes into the AI model. AI model can do its magic at that point of time and spits this out. This is not everything. What I showed you is the basics. Now, from this, we know what kind of language will be appealing to you. And
Hmm.
now I can combine that with Gen AI. I can combine that. And rather than writing that robotic, monotonous, email to you,
Yeah.
like the email that Humantic AI will write for you is going to be slightly informal. It is going to be slightly high energy. Hey, Darren, let's get this done. Because, and when you see that email compared to the 20 others that you get, which sound all the same,
Yeah.
this one will immediately stand out because it's written in your language. You don't realize, but it makes a significant difference. Like I said, this is the kind of difference that's made us the most impactful AI out there in this world of sales.
And I think from that, because it didn't take a lot of time, and that just came from one source, being
Yeah.
LinkedIn. Just having a look through it, uh, it's pretty close. It's pretty spot on
Yeah, yeah.
in terms
Generally,
of
I
what
mean, we can be off, it's AI, but we write, I don't know, 8 to 9 times out of 10. We're not
yeah.
wrong too often. Yeah,
So here's the thing for sales leaders in particular, they're often under pressure to hit numbers and make progress and get deals moving. A
right.
lot of the work is in the preparation, knowing your buyer, understanding who was the influencing factor, getting deep into creating or understanding what the customer avatar is. You've just created something in literally 5 to 10 seconds based on,
Right.
obviously it needs to have information from which to grab, right? And to
Yeah,
make certain decisions on. But let's just say that the information that is fairly readily available from multiple different sources, you get a
yeah.
pretty good understanding of that person. Which have you got, I guess, case studies or examples where this has helped an organization or sales team not so much speed up the sales cycle, but significantly accelerate, I guess, the generation of their credibility in the eyes of a buyer? Because I've got to say, if you sent that to me um, before we even met, and you started to talk the language based on all that, I'm thinking, mate, we've known each other. We must be brothers from a
Exactly.
different mother.
Exactly. Which is
That's
the
the
point,
case.
right? And guess when you have to buy, are you gonna buy from a, brother from a different mother, or you gonna buy from a stranger? In fact,
Yeah.
I like that, I like that, metaphor, where I can say, hey, when you use this, you can sound like a brother from a different mother, right, to your buyer. So that's a good one. Yeah.
So has this sped up? I guess not so much speed to market, but based on the work you're doing now in the B2B space, how has this
Yeah.
helped sales teams accelerate I guess, their deal flow or the close rates and stuff like that?
So let me say it, and I've grown up with the Indian value system. We taught to be generally modest and humble. We don't poo-poo what we have to sell too often. Well, you got to do that because otherwise, how will people find out? So before I talk about us, there's a book out there. It's called The Sales Innovation Paradox. It's a great book. I recommend reading it to everyone. Dr. Howard Dover, um, original thinking. One thing he did an experiment, took, I think, 30, 40 companies. He was trying to show the impact of using technology, what I spoke about earlier.
Yeah.
When they used the personality and the personalization part, which is what we enable, the average number of touches required to create an opportunity came from 21 to 6.7.
Wow.
That's almost a 300% change
Mm,
in number of touches. Now that's in the book. If you go, there's I think appendix A, B, C, D something
yeah.
has this experiment, clean data that people spend so much money on. Oh, I'll buy, Zoom Info because it's better than Apollo and it's better
Yep.
than, Cognism, etc. 25%, the difference is 25%. Like I said, a lot of these things are counterintuitive. We keep doing the usual.
Mm.
Coming back, so that's number one, before I even talk about ourselves, why are we number two? Ahead of us is all the sales force. So essentially, we are the most impactful, we're the best sales guy out there.
Yep.
Our impact on pipeline on the average is 109% on the average. You're
Yep.
talking about double the pipeline. We don't measure speed a lot. One of our customers did. They said the impact was 36%.
Okay.
Essentially, what used to take 25 days started taking 16 days.
Yep.
Our average impact on closed won revenue, which is the holy grail at the end of the day, average is 16.2%. Average. So from the same pipe, for $1 million, you're generating another 160K.
Yeah.
One of our customers who's been using us for 1 year, analyzed us across, I think, 1,000 deals or something. They came back and their impact on closed won revenue is 37%. So, and where is it coming from? See, it's coming from the fact that you are essentially taking that human approach, right? You just connect better.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
just connect better. Like
Mm.
I was on a call earlier today. We'd done a pilot. People had liked the product, used the product. They weren't sure if it would really impact results. And there I was. I said, look, you've not measured, right? So without measuring, you have to rely on human judgment.
Mm.
We have seen it a dozen times that when people measure, the impact is more than you think, because human mind is, like I said, we think usually, right? But the odd one is very hard to spot for the most of the people, not just the
Yeah.
average person. And at the end of it, I said, look, I don't know if we've managed to win your trust enough yet, but here's what my recommendation and suggestion is. Well, as of now, they said, well, we're gonna go back. We'll take a second look. We'll
Yeah.
come back tomorrow. What's the point that I'm making? The point I'm making is I have probably managed to earn some level of trust and credibility over the last 3 to 4 weeks when we interacted, where they are willing to listen to me and say, you know what, this Amarpreet fellow seems to be like, he doesn't seem to be a BS guy, right? So
Yeah.
that is the trust that you earn. That is the trust that starts accelerating everything. And that is the trust that helps you sell better today, tomorrow, and for, help you build relationships that will stay even beyond your current role and whatnot. So that's the impact that we are having. Not to talk about long term, it
Yeah.
is just the right way of doing things.
Yeah. And it's all human because you're not convincing them. So you
Yes,
and
yes,
you're giving them space to explore it and understand it for themselves and see how it's going to apply to their particular marketplace and their particular business.
right,
So I think
right.
as we wrap, mate, I think people listening to this, AI is going to become more and more prevalent in everybody's lives. And I'd love you to ask this question because a lot of people are quite scared about what AI
Scared, yeah.
might do.
And understandable. It's understandable.
What's your if you had a crystal ball looking over the next 5, 10 years, and we always already talked about some of the stuff that we
Yeah,
might see in
yeah, yeah,
100 years
yeah,
time. But
yeah,
from your business, and not giving any trade secrets away here at all, but where do you think the evolution of AI, particularly in buyer experience and buyer intelligence, is going to move?
yeah.
And is there anything to be concerned about? Because there'll be people out there thinking, well, how's this going to affect my role? Right? Do you see
Right.
AI as an enabler that can help account managers, BDEs, SDRs, if they're still around, sales leaders and sales teams become more effective? Or is there something they need to be concerned about?
Both, both. So a lot of people don't like my this answer because it doesn't help them a lot. But I just think that's the honest answer to give. See, both things will happen.
Yeah.
It's hard for anyone to say which will happen less, which will happen more. I mean, you can take a shot, of
Mm.
course. But if you look at even historically, right, both things happen at the same time. There will be jobs that will be lost to AI. I think it'll be foolish to say it would not happen. Oh, in the longer run, it's generally for good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there were jobs that were lost to farm machinery. And at that point, people resented that. But overall, our life is much better, right? Because we don't have to do physical work on the farm, and we're sitting here, in a nice place. And right, you get my point.
Yeah.
But on the other side is also, as they say, that you're more likely to lose your job to a AI-enabled seller than
Mm.
AI itself.
Yeah.
So I think Goldman Sachs has a report. All these reports, they you could throw them in the bin and it wouldn't make a difference. But still, I think it makes sort of a reasonable point. It says its data is that 63% of the jobs will be significantly modified, 8% will be replaced. I don't think the numbers matter, but I think that's a good thing to work with,
Mm.
where we should be ready in the sales world. And I was talking to someone today morning. I see the lower end of the jobs, the more standardized work, like STRs have been coming up often.
Yeah.
It will get replaced completely by AI.
Mm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very likely to happen. Lower end of the work. It's
Yeah.
not here yet. That's called agents. That's the AI agents is the term for that. There's 100 startups already doing AI agents of different types. I don't think the technology is ready, but it will be soon enough. And then the other end is where the seller who does more complex selling is going to be heavily assisted by AI.
Mm.
And that's where the best thing we can do for ourselves is, and then what I would say is, it's a little self-serving, but I'm saying it because I believe in it. The best thing we can do, it's always been that way, is to adopt technology, is to
Yeah.
adopt AI, is
Yeah.
to open up our mind simply.
Yeah.
That's the best thing we can do. It still could happen that my job will get replaced by AI. It's still possible, but the odds of it happening would be lower. And odds would be that I would actually end up moving into a higher value add
Mm.
role. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's what we can do to improve our odds the best, I would think.
Love it. And I think it's a great way to finish up because I look at it. I like to look at things as my profile that you kindly provided me said. I look at things optimistically. Um, I reckon this can help enhance our ability to be more effective as
Yes.
salespeople and certainly as sales leaders. So any technology that we can get access to that can help us create a better buying experience
Yes.
and can help us reduce timelines in terms of sales cycles and stuff like that has to be a good thing. As long as
Right.
we're doing it ethically, as long as we're doing it with integrity, and as long as we've got, I guess, the desires and the needs and the wants of the customers in the
Yeah.
forefront of our mind, not us trying
Yeah.
to convince them to take our product because we think our product is the best in the marketplace. So,
Exactly.
mate, it's been an absolute pleasure. I love this conversation. It's been an hour already. So,
It's
for
been.
people who want to know a little bit more about you and specifically Humantic AI, where's the best place for them to connect with you?
So Humantic AI is humantic.ai, humantic.ai. Our website, it's a pretty good resource. We have a lot of information out there. To connect with me, you just have to roughly get my name right. I'm the only Amarpreet Kalkat in the world. So
The
if
only
you
one in the
type up,
world. You are an
yeah,
individual.
there's no other Amarpreet Kalkat. There are Kalkats and there are Amarpreets, but then there's no other Amarpreet Kalkat. But at least to the best of my knowledge, even if it is, I think I still pop up at least first, on Google search. So yeah, look up Amarpreet Kalkat. I'm fairly active on LinkedIn. I'm reasonably active on Twitter. I'm not a part of Instagram generation, so unfortunately, Twitter and LinkedIn are the only two places that you will find me. So that's a good place
Sensational.
to connect. Absolutely look forward.
Brilliant. Thank you, my friend. So I'll put that on the show notes. And yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday.
Well, thank you, Darren. It's absolutely been a pleasure. I think you made this conversation super easy, super flowing, super comfortable, which is like I run a podcast, and I think there's a thing or two for me to learn and take away from that. I think we ended up having some pretty meaningful conversations, hopefully insightful. We'll let the audience, decide that.
I'll always decide that, but I greatly appreciate the feedback, mate.
All
And
right,
I
thank you,
really,
Darren. It's
really
been a
enjoyed the
pleasure.
conversation. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Exceptional Sales Leader podcast. I trust the information in this episode has been helpful in your journey towards becoming exceptional. And remember, please take the time to rate the show, subscribe to the show so other people can find it, But also, if I can help you, jump on my calendar, go to leadwithdarren.com, and let's have a conversation about how I can help you along your journey to being exceptional.